Et maintenant, nous sommes ravis, nous avons l'immense honneur d'accueillir Judy Singer. Alors, Judy Singer, c'est la psychologue et sociologue australienne qui est à l'origine du terme de neurodiversité et de tout le mouvement qui l'accompagne. Et comme un bonheur n'arrive jamais seul, on a la chance d'avoir pour cette conversation avec nous aussi Claire Stride, qui est une représentante de la neurodiversité dans la francophonie, une représentante émérite de cette neurodiversité. Et donc, je suis vraiment dans une grande joie de pouvoir commencer cet entretien avec vous deux. Bonjour Claire. Hi Judy. And so, Judy, thank you so much for being with us tonight. I want to ask you for the first question, from where comes the word and concept of neurodiversity you gave to the world?
Well, it comes from a mixture of my own personal experience and from my studies as an honours degree in sociology at University of Technology, Sydney, from a disability rights and social constructionist position initially. My personal experience, well, it came from a lot of suffering condensed down into a lot of my words. It's based on the fact that I described myself as being in the middle of 3 generations of women on the autistic spectrum, somewhere on the autistic spectrum. My mother, myself, and my daughter. And my mother, I always thought there was something strange about my mother, and when I was old enough, I went and looked her up in the psychiatry textbooks, and I found absolutely nothing about her case or symptoms or behaviours. And so then I decided, well, she made a terrible moral mistake in her life, and she was a bad person, and that was all there was. And but then when I had a daughter, she was like my mother, and that's when I realized we had a hereditary genetic issue in the family. And I also remembered that people said I was odd and a bit strange and eccentric. So that's how I eventually discovered the autistic spectrum. And I then, because I was a single parent, I couldn't work anymore after my daughter was born, and I decided to go back to university and research my condition. And about that time, I started to hear about Asperger's syndrome, and I realized that that was what we had. But the actual idea of neurodiversity came from an earlier time before I knew this about autism. But I was thinking, my mother was actually a Holocaust survivor as well. She survived the Auschwitz concentration camp. And from a very young age, I was trying to think about the nature of evil. And I thought, if the 10 Commandments, if the first commandment had been something like honor diversity, we wouldn't have all the ethnic hatred and all the hatred of difference that we have now. And I suggested it once. I'm not religious, but I suggested it to my rabbi at a meeting where we had to come up with a better set of 10 Commandments, and he just didn't. He pretended not to hear me, and I was annoyed, and that word diversity stuck in my mind. So diversity comes from obviously the rise of the Green Movement, and that word became popular. And the neuro component, my thesis was called A Personal Exploration of a New Social Movement Based on Neurological Diversity. And I did that as a part research, part theory. And I came to the conclusion that there was a new movement brewing that would be as big as the women's movement and the gay movement and feminist movement. And I thought it needed a name. And I thought, oh, neurological diversity. And then I thought, that's too long. And then I just thought, oh, neurodiversity, smash it together. Great name for a movement. And then I forgot about it. I only had 2 sentences in my thesis about it, and I didn't think too much of it. I also want to say that the neuro part of it comes from the recognition that my generation was sick and tired of psychotherapy, and particularly for autistic people. We felt we had been we had been abused by it, in terms of people always trying to find out what's wrong with, what did your parents do to you to make you like that, and never led anywhere. So, and I just realized that neuroscience was starting to, as a hard science, was starting to eclipse psychodynamics. And so, and I thought, oh, neuroscience is going to be so big. And if we call ourselves neurodiversity, it's going to sound so important. And I just felt it was the right word for the times. I didn't really understand all its implications, but I just knew it was perfect for the times, and so it turned out to be.
Thanks, Judy. Could you explain, please, what were people afraid of with your mother or your daughter? What's happened?
What happened? Well, I don't want to talk too much about my mother. Basically, I don't really want to go there. I did start a support group for people raised by autistic parents, and I'm sorry to say that our parents had no empathy, and what happened with the group was we ended up having about 200 members, and our parents had no empathy. They had monotones. They talked endlessly about their one topic. I mean, basically, pretty much the description of autism as it was then. And what happened in the group was that it was a healing process for us. And as I began to understand more about Asperger's, the idea behind it was, personally, for healing for me, for basically not having a mother present, was to understand my mother, to understand the kinds of pressures that she had been under. And that was a healing process. And in the end, we had a beautiful relationship, but it was based on me recognizing that she was what she was and she wasn't going to change. And then secondly, that when she moved in, we all went on antidepressants, and then she went to a old people's home, and there she was looked after, and all her needs were met, and people didn't expect great personals, and she blossomed. She became a beautiful, golden, loving person who everybody loved. So that was my intention with that group, to heal the hurt, and to make sure that it was a different world for people like my mother, for everybody, for the children of people with Asperger's parents. They obviously needed help in those families, and for our children as well. And I think that's happening, but I still find it very difficult. A lot of people get very upset about the fact that I say that my mother had no empathy, and they don't like my website, but I think it's the truth. And I think the only way to make progress is to look at both sides of the question. And I guess I'm going to wander off into a slightly different topic, which is what I do, because I don't have a linear mind. I have a all over mind, and then I forget what I was going to say. But so my problem with the neurodiversity movement now is that it's too much rainbows and sunshine, and that's not a real picture of the world. So I think as a movement, we have to grow up and look at the dark side and the light side. We can't just always be lecturing other people and trying to make out, in a way, a lot of people seem to be wanting to say that it's a normal variation. Well, there's no normal in nature. Nature just is. It's diverse and doesn't care about normal. We have to create a niche for ourselves that includes our strengths and our weaknesses and our ability to talk openly about it.
Yes, thank you very much. It's very important to have this kind of movement. I think it wasn't very easy to create this kind of movement about neurodiversity. How did you do that?
I did nothing. Well, what happened? No, I didn't do it. I mean, what I did was I think I captured some in this thesis. I captured something about the zeitgeist. It was just a lot of things came together in me, but I didn't do anything. I wrote the thesis. Everybody thought I was mad. Nobody paid any attention. I didn't even do a PhD. I couldn't bear it because they wanted to, because PhDs, you know, it's a double-edged sword, you know, it cuts both ways. And I didn't want to be in that kind of narrower and narrower, you know, spend the next five. And besides, I was poor. I'm a sole parent. First I was a carer for my mother. Then I was a carer for my child. I had to go back to work. And I don't want to do a PhD. Sometimes I do because it gives you legitimacy. But so I didn't do anything. After that, I dropped out of university. I knocked on a lot of doors. I was so excited about what I saw was coming, but nobody would listen to me. They thought I was an eccentric, and we don't discover things in Australia. I'm sorry, that's the attitude. You know, you have to be famous overseas before you're taken seriously here. And yet part of the reason why my work was important was that it was global, because being in Australia, I took the best of the British, putting my hands out, the British, the American and the French philosophical trends that were happening at the time and put them all together. And so it was because of my geographical location as well as my historical my location in time, in space, in history, in genetics, all came together, and that's how it came from. I also just want to say that what was I going to say? Oh, so I do want to define neurodiversity, if you're going to ask me that, or what I think it is, or what I think it meant. So for me, it's very important to say that, one, neurodiversity is a subset of biodiversity.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay.
It's not, and diversity is a measurement of the variation in a population. So neurodiversity is just a statement of all the variation that's in the human population of the earth, and that is infinitely variable. And like I said before, there's nothing natural about each person. Nature doesn't care about natural. So that's that's what neurodiversity itself is, but it's actually used as a name for a movement.
Yeah.
And what I said in my thesis was, one, that that it prefigured the autistic self-advocacy movement, which is what I was part of, and was what's the word, that I was researching as a participant and observer. The movement, sorry, the neurodiversity, sorry, you might have to edit this. So I should have had the quote right next to me. I'll just give you a space to edit. So what I said was that the significance of the autistic spectrum and the autistic self-advocacy movement was a call for politics of neurodiversity. And I wanted to add neurodiversity to the intersections of class, gender, ethnicity, disability, but I thought the disability rights paradigm did not cover us at all. It was only about physical, intellectual, and mental illness, everything else. And we were a different category. We were none of those. So I wanted to add it to intersectionality, and that was all. And I also overshadowed that we think about ourselves as a neuro. I didn't put it explicitly again, but I did talk about us not realizing yet that we were a neurological minority, and that is my preferred term now. I don't like people saying neurodiverse people. That's everybody. I like neurodivergent. Yeah, maybe neurominority is the political term that I like. And basically, for me, it's really about, I'm not crazy about everything about intersectionality, but I won't go into that. But I do think the most important issue is poverty, and that's where we've all got to pull together class and poverty.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. I think it's a bridge with the second question. Alban, please.
Yes, we wanted to know how can this concept help people concerned by forms of discrepancies, but finally, with what you said, for all people.
So, well, it is for, well, I guess what I had in mind was a movement of that used the concept of neurodiversity, or the idea that a neurodiverse ecosystem, it's always a place, it's a workplace, or a,
yes,
that a biodiverse system is the most sustainable, the most healthy, the most effective. And I just applied it so that we must facilitate biodiversity in the same way we must facilitate neurodiversity in culture, just as we do biodiversity in nature. So that was my idea. But the people who spearheaded the movement were obviously the people who were most excluded. We were the minority that will change the world, in the same way that the women's movement has changed things for women, but also for the whole world, in that women's creativity is now available for everyone. Similarly with the gay movement, gay people don't have to hide, and their creativity can blossom as well, and so can ours. So how to facilitate, I think you asked, or how then, it's just a matter of awareness and consciousness raising, which is what we're doing anyway. We're doing it right now, and the world is changing, particularly, you know, even in Australia. Just yesterday, they were talking about neurodiversity for the first time in our national broadcasting system, in the ABC, our national broadcaster. And, you know, so it's even here now, and there's a lot of background. So it's changing minds. It's changing minds about what human nature really is, from this narrow thing of there's the normal, which is really an ideal that doesn't exist, to a much broader version of everybody having different things to contribute, rather than just being this very narrow band. I think that is starting to happen.
Yes, it's changing minds. It takes a long time. We have to be very patient. Do you think everyone can care about neurodiversity, and is it explicit enough, this word neurodiversity? How you said, maybe we say neurodivergent, we said some other word. I just want to say, we say human people, but it's do you think everyone can care about neurodiversity all around the world?
Well, I don't think they can care. Some of them are going to hate it, in the same way that they hate feminism and the gay liberation. And in fact, you know, we're having a huge backlash against identity politics, which is what elects people like Trump. It's because of that right wing. So no, people are not going to embrace it. But here's the interesting thing, and this is like mimetic theory from what do you know Richard Dawkins, his work, in which basically meme theory says that a meme is like an idea, that like a gene that it's an idea that replicates. So
Yes.
in order to replicate, you've got to talk about it or discourse about it. So as long as people are talking about it, whether they like it or not, it grows. Whether you're for it or against it, if you keep talking, the only way it will die is if people stop talking about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's caring for humanity first. I agree totally.
That goes back to, you know, what I was saying before. It's not all rainbows and sunshine. There will be a big pushback, and you have to be organized and fight for, or we don't have to be organized because of the net. We just keep talking it up, and we have to be prepared for pushback because it will happen.
Yeah. When we talk about neurodiversity, some people say that they don't feel normal. They are not like everyone, so they can't be accepted, and it's very, very difficult for them. To find a balance when we are neuroatypical is very difficult. What do you think about this balance?
About this, what was the last word?
The balance when we are neuroatypical with all other people.
Well, I think so. My philosophy is if you're going to have a philosophy, it has to be stoicism. I mean, life is full of shit, let's face it, and nothing's fair, and nobody, we get a deck of cards and you don't get to choose what you've got. And there are times when I hate myself, you know, like when I hate my difficulties, and I do suffer, and I wish I was something else, and I wish I was just more like someone else. But, you know, there's always no one's ever satisfied with themselves. And basically it's a matter of finding your own people. I haven't found them. All my own people are overseas now. I've hardly got anyone here. I'm as lonely as anything, really, still. I haven't found it. But we've got that stoicism. Life is shit, but you've got to just keep trying to do the good thing, the best thing, the right thing.
Yes.
That gives your life meaning, and that keeps you, you know, that keeps me strong, because I know that I'm pursuing the truth, even if I get it wrong, and that makes me feel good about myself. In the morning, at night, I feel like, oh God, life is shit and unbearable. So yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah, I understand, and yeah, everyone is responsible for their own way of living it. And I saw a lot of people with victimization syndrome. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. Well, yeah, we don't call it that here. We call it intersectionality, in which everyone just embraces their victimhood. So for me, intersectionality, I'm not crazy about it. For a start, there's a lot of anti-Semitic elements in it, which just shows that these people don't fully understand what they're doing. So that's the first thing. And I mean, that's an obvious thing. And there's so many other ways you can divide us, you know, like that intersectionality doesn't include the advantage that people who are very beautiful or very tall already have, or the advantages that people who live in New York or London or Paris have. There's a whole lot of things that it doesn't cover. But I think it's an important baby step. Like when you first discover, oh my goodness, I'm autistic, I've suffered so much, I'm autistic, you find all your friends, you complain about anything that's happened to you, which is good because we've all really suffered. But when you, I don't know, it's a double-edged sword. It's kind of unpleasant, but it's important. For me, it's unpleasant because I'm like, we said all this 20 years ago when I was in my support group, and when I see people, you know, doing it, and I'm thinking, oh, it's so obnoxious. But I think it's necessary because they're spreading information, and it's not what I think that matters. It's just it's a dialectical process, and I guess you all know what a dialectical process is. Yes, should I say what it is?
Yeah.
Well, some people might. Well, the dialectical process is the thesis, antithesis, synthesis, new thesis, new antithesis, and so on. Change is about opposition and conflict and the evolution of that. So that's how it goes. And be strong and stay away from Twitter as much as possible.
Yeah, I got it. So yes, living together, it's a real challenge. Yes, and it's question 3, please, Alban.
How to encourage the valuation of neurodiversity in society, especially in professional sphere, but globally also.
Can you say that again? I didn't hear it. Start from the beginning.
What do you think we can do to encourage the valuation of neurodiversity in society, especially in professional sphere, but globally also in different?
Well, I think we're already doing it. In the first place, we're already doing it. And in the second place, what is happening is capitalism's taking over with its amazing productive abilities and its disadvantages as well. I gave a talk at Stanford University neurodiversity conference last month or at the beginning of the month, and they were talking about neurodiversity in the workplace. So there's already a big academic and commercial push to include for neurodiversity in the workplace. It's a really huge, it's big business. You know, IBM's doing it, Microsoft's doing it, SAP, lots of the big companies are starting to have a neurodiversity policy already, which is, on the one hand, it's a good thing, but I decided that I wanted to talk about what I call the commodification of neurodiversity, which is turning, you know, commodification is turning something into an item that you trade for profit, okay? What was I going to say? And I think it's a double-edged sword. What we're seeing at the moment, or what I think I'm seeing, is when people talk about neurodiversity in the workplace, what they're really talking about is a global trade in male computer programmers, computer coders. And there's always been the computer industry has always been full of people on the autistic spectrum. So in autistic male coders. And I'm not seeing any action for women. I myself was a computer programmer, actually, because I'm quite logical. But, and there were actually more people in the computer industry then than there are now, for reasons that I don't understand, mainly because I don't really like it. You know, it's too linear and too mechanical for me. So I'm not seeing any movement of finding employment for women with for autistic women. I'm not seeing work for men who don't want to do computer coding. So it's got a long way to go. And at the moment, I think it's quite exploitative. Like, we've got multinational companies that come here and they take over the employment agency, you know, the people who put recruitment agencies, they're taking over from locals and selling computer programmers to the government, for instance. But I think that commodification, which is what this is a double-edged sword, because it's very productive and it has huge global reach. At the same time, it can be exploitative. So we've got to find that balance, but it's already happening. So I think if you're a neurodivergent professional computer programmer, you're doing good. But everyone else has got to fight for a place at the table.
Yes, in France we have a lot of programs for women in IT, in a computers company, for people without diplomas, without students, and we thought that a lot of IT companies are looking for autistic people because it's great to have some autistic people in the company, and yes, it's always be, and we have I think it's Microsoft in France making a special unit with autistic people and neurotypical people. But what about the managers? What we have to learn to the manager to work with autistic people or all neurotypical people?
Well, that is what these companies do, so that's a good thing that they do. I think what I did want to say was that that kind of knowledge is going to grow because they do hire these autistic recruitment companies to get the, and those people, they're committed to both educating the managers and making sure that the people who work there, they keep in touch with the people, the employees and the managers to sort out any, I mean, that's the ideal. Some of them claim to do it and maybe don't. My problem with the multinationals that come in here is that Australian companies should be able to do just as well. But I also think that the big picture is that I've been looking at some of these companies, you know, they have their big glossy, lots of pictures, annual report. And when I look through them, they don't say anything about gender. They don't have any gender breakdown. Every report should have what they have done to make sure that it's not just men who get jobs, but women also, for instance. Yes. Otherwise, it's not neurodiversity. It's just male, the usual, basically. So we have to look at things like that as a movement. We have to look at the general, look at the annual reports of these big companies and see who have they actually employed. There are lots of jobs that women are good at, and you know, things like, well, obviously writing, you know, but admin, all kinds of things, you know, and some computer ancillary stuff. I hate computer programming, but I love doing a spreadsheet or I even like doing a PowerPoint. You know, there's lots of things that women could be doing, copywriting, admin jobs, and sometimes even brilliant women. I was going to say, well, I'm pretty smart, but sometimes I just want to do repetitive tasks. I wouldn't mind being paid for a low stress, repetitive job twice, you know, 2 days a week. The other thing that I want to say is that people are talking up, you know, neurodiversity in the workplace, and they forget that the economy is shrinking. And so if you put in neurodivergent people and throw out, they're taking away a job of someone else, and that's capitalism for you. And the economy is shrinking. So what are we going to do about that? And my thought in my next talk that I gave at Dublin, I was talking more about what we do need a universal basic income for everybody, so that people and decent housing for everybody, public housing, universal basic services. And we also need to, personally, I think what's happened with autism is that it's become such a broad label that it's starting to, people are resenting it. You know, people think, oh, middle class people just want to be, you know, have a minority, belong to a minority at last. So they're so happy and excited, but they're already very successful. I think we need to move away from, well, we need to move away from the system we've got, which is actually based on the welfare system, which requires a doctor's medical label. So you get autism and then your whole being is like, now I'm autistic, you know, down to here. and it's all because of the work. And then whereas what we really need is a needs-based system, which is not by psychiatrists, but could be by occupational therapists or psychiatrists or any number who can say, okay, what this person needs is an environment that's got no fluorescent lights and has noise and absorbs noise. It's not like, or they just need understanding that the fact that they're eccentric doesn't mean that they're bad or that they're stupid or what, you know. So you need people who can advocate. You need advocates in the workplace for each person's needs. And then you find that many things, we're finding that the whole workplace benefits once there are reasonable adjustments.
Yes, totally. We see more and more testimonials from autistic people of their jobs in the company, and I think it can really help people to understand things and to make a new system. You have totally right. Our system is very old-fashioned, is very outdated, very old, and I think with the experience of everyone, so we can build something. I hope to, really.
I think so. I think it's very important. That label has been very important because it brings people together. They discuss their issues. They develop a movement. That's what it is. It's an online discursive sort of movement. But at a certain point, the labels just, I think it's going to become unpopular.
Yeah.
But by that time we will have developed this whole body of understanding and move on to the next step, which should be needs-based, universal systems, services, universal basic services like, you know, physiotherapy and the rest of it.
Yes.
Like
we
don't have to go there. It's for, and we don't even know where the world's going at the moment. So
baby steps.
Baby steps, exactly.
Alban, your turn.
Yes, with the promotion of divergent people will allow our society to face effectively the changes we encounter now, the crisis we're going to reach or we're already reached?
I think it already has, because I mean, we're realizing that, for instance, with COVID, it's autistic people generally don't have a problem with isolation. They like working from home. So we see that, you know, I mean, the genetic pool is diverse for a good reason, because when circumstances change, there's someone who'll fit that niche. So at the moment, the niche that we had in our society was loud voices, extrovert, confident, all the rest of it. That's what that business, and like you could almost say, kind of expansive, colonialist even, it needs those kind of people. But because of the epidemic, we need a different kind of person, because of the computer industry, which is created, I think, by autistic people anyway. I believe Wikipedia is pretty much all the editors are autistic as well, or not all, but do you know what's his name? Joseph Chauvenet. What was his name?
Yes.
Joseph Chauvenet.
Yeah, so I met him in Montreal 2 years ago, and why did I say? He was the one that said, oh, the Wikipedia is full of people who are on the autistic spectrum, who are living in poverty, and a lot of them are even homeless, and society's not recognizing them. You can check it with him if it's true, but I reckon it would be true. And they're filling a niche. So now society has actually got to make sure that people who fill those niches are actually paid a decent wage, have somewhere to live, and all the rest of it. Universal basic income, public housing, and all the rest of it again. Did I answer the question? Remind me what the question was.
Oh, the question.
How can say it again, just how can...
Yes, Albert,
yes, how can the divergence help to face the crises, the changes we reach now in our society? Yes, I think you answered. Yes.
Yeah. Any other question?
Yeah, just to say something about what we are living now. I have had several testimonials from neurodivergent people, autistic people, saying that the lockdown was good because it was a limitation of human interaction. So it was easier emotionally. It was like to be in how to say, I have lost the word, what is the word? It's a bubble. So you can stay as a bubble at your home, and it's safer. And they say, okay, I like lockdown. It's good for myself. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's what I was trying to say, that the epidemic suits autistic people, and they become very productive in it because they don't want company. And so that's where, you know, everything to do with computers is where a lot of autistic people do excel. And that's exactly proves the point. Suddenly neurotypical people who need a lot of company and need to be going out and are really suffering, and autistic people are not as much, provided they have a home that they can afford, provided they can pay the rent, provided they can afford food. So it keeps going back to that same thing. Yes, make sure everybody in society is paid. And I think now when I was doing my research, I was on the same group as Harvey Bloom, and he and I discussed this idea, and he was the one that published it first because he was a journalist, and in it he said a very good thing, and it was something, and I quoted him in my thesis, although he never quoted me, but we won't talk about that. And he said something like, who knows in what future time neurodiversity is going to be beneficial. And of course it is. I mean, we all carry genes for all kinds of things, and some people are already immune to COVID as well because of diversity or hormonal or whatever. So yeah, absolutely.
Oh, sorry, yes. And I think that we can help. I said we because I am a neurodivergent too, as you know, and I see that we have another vision. We have some other abilities, and I think we can work together with other people to build something new, because it's, yes, we see the world with another view, and I think it's possible to make something very different and better, I really think.
Well, we're already doing it. We're doing it. The three of us are talking.
Yes.
People will, they probably already know everything we've said, but if they don't, they're going to learn something new. And it's what I said before, it's a meme. It's every time people talk about it, it grows and grows and grows. So we're doing it. This is it. This is the real.
This is it. And I think we can have the last question, Alban.
Yes, so to finish, we wanted to ask you what the future do you want for neurodiversity, but you already partly answered, but it's good to finish to ask you that.
Well,
anyway.
When I give a presentation, I always give a couple of quotes, and one is from, they're both from French people rather. The first one is Louis, now I've forgotten his name, that's terrible. Anyway, he's a socialist. He was the one that came up with from each according to his ability, to each according to their need. Now, what is that saying? I can't believe I know it in French because I used it first when I was in Montreal at the French-Canadian conference. Oh, come on.
I know about Joseph, I know about Melanie, but I don't know.
Do you know this one?
Yeah, I know it. I know, by Melanie Ouimet.
Yeah, that's right. So I've got an article in here somewhere.
It's Louis Martin Carrière, you search?
Ah, yeah, maybe. I think it is.
Here it is. There's Joseph Chauvenet. He did the preface.
Yes.
I did somewhere in here is my piece. Oh.
Yeah.
So it's Louis somebody, and I just can't remember his name, but there it is.
I don't see. Maybe you can put. I don't read.
My terrible French. Now you don't have to feel bad about les besoins de chacun selon ses facultés.
Oui. Oui.
Right. So that is what I usually end in. And I also, you're going to have to do a lot of editing here. So from each according to their abilities, to each according to their needs, that's what a society does. It gives a just society. This is an ideal that we always have to work towards. We're never going to reach it, because if you start trying too hard, you end up with a totalitarian society. But we all work towards it, and that's what Person of Goodwill does. That's the kind of society I want. It means a lot of awareness, like how do we know what a person's abilities are? By being open-minded and aware. How do we know what their needs are? Again, by being open and aware, but it's also about an understanding of economics, of society, of philosophy. You know, there's 3,000 years of philosophy that has never resolved these questions, but we just keep trying.
Yes, and when I'm listening to you, I was thinking. I said, okay, she started something. We built a movement, and now we are here making this video, this congress, and we are following this movement, and we want to grow up and grow up and grow up, and make of neurodiversity an evidence. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say, but I hope that one day I can say I am dyslexic, like I have brown hair, and it's the same. You know, I would like live in a world like that, and I think it's possible, because you start something, we are making something, and people are listening to you, and they will do something to make some baby steps again and again and again. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think you said it in a more concrete way than I did, but absolutely everyone should be able to be themselves without shame.
Yeah.
I'm more better at philosophizing than talking about practical things. Okay, thank you so much for listening to me, and
thank you. Thank to you.
And thanks to Alban as well for organising it and getting in touch with me. And please edit out all the rubbish in between that I said.
Thanks so much, Judy. Thanks for your time, and it's always a real pleasure to have a conversation with you, and you're very inspiring, and thanks for, I'm not sure of the word, you give me, when I listening to you, you give me hope and faith, so thanks so much, really.
Good idea that you don't, good that you talk to me in the morning. You wouldn't want to talk to me at night.
Okay, so now you will have a wonderful day. Enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Judy.
Bye,
And
Judy.
Bye.
Yeah, and yeah, I
Bonsoir à
want to
tous.
just say bye-bye to all your people who come to your congress.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. Bye.
Okay, bye.